1 Kings 18, verse 16 says this. Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. Then he saw Elijah and said to him, "Is that you, you troublemaker of Israel?" Notice, think about that, the troublemaker of Israel. And you think about that, that's how Ahab is now viewing Elijah, and Elijah is simply holding to what they used to follow. But now he's viewed as a troublemaker, and that's exactly the position that believers are in right now. Believers were following, the whole culture was once following, now departing, and now you, if you are faithful, and you must be faithful, you're holding on to God. And so now those who hold on to God are viewed as troublemakers. Especially that woman right there. Holy troublemaker. Well, the thing is, the kingdom had moved away from its foundation, had rejected its Judeo-Christian foundation. But Elijah and the people of God, the prophets of God, the faithful of God, those who held, they represented that foundation that the culture had fallen from. That's why it was their very existence was a trouble for Israel, because they reminded Israel of what they had fallen from. And so the very existence of Elijah, that he would not bend his knee to Baal, that very existence was a thorn in their side. Their conviction. See, if there was nobody who remained faithful, there'd be no witness, there'd be no conviction. But those who stay faithful are a conviction to the culture. As Messiah said, the darkness hates the light because it testifies. Its deeds are evil. And so that's where we are now. Why are those who stand strong for God increasingly attacked, increasingly hated, increasingly mocked, marginalized, called intolerant, increasingly made to look as if they were the troublemakers? Everything was peaceful until they came along with this new morality. No, it's all the opposite. But why is the culture so bent on this? There's a book some of us read in school, and there's a movie called Lord of the Flies. And it's interesting because at the beginning, they're on an island, they're stranded, all these choir boys, and they're following the good one. But in the end, they all start going over to the wild, bad, savage one. At the end, they're hunting down the good one to kill him. Well, that's like a picture of the age here. Why is the culture so? Because we are the Elijahs of the day. And if there's a spirit of Ahab and Jezebel, then we are the Elijahs, then they are not going to be happy. It is our very continued witness to God that testifies to the culture of its fall, of what it fell from. If we don't go along with us, if you don't go along with us, we're against you because you convict us of what we are doing. For the same reason, there's a movement in culture to depict America as if it had never been anything else, as if we had never rejected the ways of God. This is just the way we always were, and anybody who says anything else, they're coming up, they're just trying to stir up trouble. Even though they're just saying what was always been before we fell away from it. Just as Ahab did to Elijah. He says, you're the troublemaker. He's rejecting the fact that he's the one who fell, and Elijah's just still standing. And he says, so you're the troublemaker. You're the one, and Elijah answers him, no, I am not the troublemaker. You are the troublemaker of Israel, because you have departed from the God of Israel. Why do you think all across America the Ten Commandments were removed, struck down, removed from plaques, monuments, public square? Legal issue? No, behind that's a spiritual thing. It's a nation falling away from God because the culture is trying to erase the testimony against it, that it has fallen, because the Ten Commandments reminds it of what it is doing. It convicts it what it's doing, because if you're a culture that now promotes sexual immorality, you don't want to see you shall not commit adultery. If you are now a culture that embodies covetousness, you got to remove the words, thou shalt not covet. If the culture embraces other idols, gods, it must strike down the words, you shall have no other gods before me. Why is the culture bent on removing nativity scenes as if they were dangerous? Crosses, trying to erase the memory of what it once was so it can erase the memory of the fall from what it was. So every person in America who refuses to go along with the apostasy becomes a witness against the apostasy, a conviction. Those who do not bow their knee to Baal are a testimony against a civilization that has bowed its knees to Baal. A culture can erase words and can remove stone, but it can't do that with people. So instead, it must seek to silence them. That's why there is a climate of political correctness. That's why so many forces and pressures against the people of God, against you from simply speaking the word of God. So it must seek to intimidate them, shame them, boycott them, fire them from their jobs, even throw them in jail. In the days of Jezebel, the people of God, the prophets of God, were driven into hiding. So there is a pressure for the people of God to go into the closet and hide your faith, or to marginalize them so no one can hear them. And a profound thing, at the same time when Western civilization is rejecting its Judeo-Christian foundation that was given to it by apostles, the disciples, the New Testament, the Jewish believers, and the Jewish church in the book of Acts, at that same time, God resurrects a Judeo-Christian witness by bringing back Jewish believers and a church that is increasingly joined to its Jewish roots. That's a prophetic thing. The nature of evil is never tolerance. It may use tolerance to get in the door, but then it will, once in the door, it's the end of tolerance. And that's to stamp out any vestige of resistance. The enemy says, bow down before me, and there's no one who can stand. And that's why the few who stand are such a threat, as their very stand exposes the house of cards.